Hello and welcome to Bad Hasbara, the world's most moral podcast. My name is Matt Lieb and I will be your co-host for this podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and to those of you out there watching on the YouTube channel, thank you. This must be very exciting for you. For those of you who are not watching and you are listening like good little boys and girls, thank you. Keep listening. You don't need to watch our faces, but if you happen to be watching, you would know that I am in person with Daniel Maté and our guest today. So, hi, Daniel.
How did I get here?
How did I get here? It's Talking Heads. Are we
Talking Heads? Yeah.
Nice.
Same as it ever was. No, 1 minute I was sitting in my apartment in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Just sipping ironic coffee, and suddenly I was in
sunny Los Angeles. Yeah. So I am actually joined here by my co-host. This is the second time he has visited the home studio here in undisclosed location in Los Angeles. Is it West LA? Is it East LA? You'll never know, you fucking weirdos. I do not want my address out there. You know, I'm now living at a time in my life where I cannot give well, it's not like I used to give my address out.
Yeah.
But ever since I started this podcast, I was like, I think I need to get one of them like delete me accounts where it like takes away all your private info. Highly recommend. I was recommended delete me from a friend who gets doxxed a lot and was like, this works out well ever since I got it. Never doxxed again.
I just signed up for the Cancel Me app.
Oh, you're trying to get canceled.
Well, what it does is it puts horrific things. It quotes you like it just invents. It's an AI bot that invents horrible things you said that should never be said by anyone.
Yes,
and just make sure that no one will ever. It's a great way to just take the pressure off of being an influencer. I think it's a great idea, because that way you flood the market with horrible things that you have said, even if you haven't said them, and then you can be like, oh no, I didn't say that. The AI made me do slurs. Exactly. And
then people won't be able to distinguish the real from the fake. It's actually a very Israeli way of handling this. You flood the market with horrible things, and you can't keep track of it. One day starting a war with Iran, next day mass graves next to a hospital in Gaza. It's like, which one am I mad about?
It also gives you a sort of place to start from, so that the rest of your career is about doing better.
That's
and
right.
Being the sort of most improved player.
Yeah.
Everyone, can sort of give you credit for trying.
I think I want my career to be the one where I have, like, out of every, celebrity, because, let's face it, we're celebrities.
Let's just admit it.
Let's just admit it.
Like, what's the point in denying it any further?
So
we are in LA.
I mean, yeah. Listen, we're in Los Angeles.
Dreams are made of.
We're basically halfway there. All we need now is people to know who we are. But I want to.
I recognized you when I walked in the door.
Yeah, well, usually people who have seen me before are like, "Hey, I know you.
You're a celebrity in my life." Yeah.
Well, that's not. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm like my mom's favorite celebrity. But
you're my mom's favorite celebrity too.
Oh, I'm sorry. But yeah, no, maybe what if I had the most apology apps? Like Notes app apologies. Like that was my claim to fame. Like this guy's apologized so many times.
He's really
he's sorry.
He's really accountable.
Or as you would say, sorry. Yeah. Let's introduce our guest. Our guest today here at the home studio in Los Angeles is an Arab Jewish scholar, mystic, and artist whose work focuses on multi-religious spirituality, politics, social issues, and community building. She is a 10th generation Jerusalemite with lineage roots also in Syria, Kurdistan, Iraq, and Iran. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone else, Hadar Cohen is here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
I'm so excited to have you on. I've been wanting to have you on for a while now, and I never in my wildest dreams could have imagined I would have both you and Daniel here at the same time.
Well, dreams do come true.
They do. It's LA, baby.
City of angels.
City of angels. City of sometimes you podcast in person with people. So thank you for coming here. How have you guys been doing? What have you guys been up to? Have you guys gone to any, I don't know, protests recently?
Checked out the USC encampment yesterday.
Nice.
That was really sweet. I haven't gotten over to UCLA yet, but we were there at a pretty quiet moment at USC, and the people seemed to be like just hanging tough.
Yeah.
As the New Kids on the Block suggested.
Sure.
There was a guy giving a self-defense workshop to about 5 people who were listening, but it was very, very specific directions for dealing with cops and things like that.
Oh, that's
good. There was art for sale. There was food on offer.
Yeah, I felt it was really inspiring to see how they just created a village, you know, where different needs can be met. They had, you know, a medic support. They had a book library where people can donate books, can learn.
The Rifat Al-Arir Memorial Library.
Yeah. Oh, what really was that? Man, that's cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
They had beautiful signs all over. They had Free Palestine in different languages.
Nice.
So just the diversity of also the groups of students who were coming through was really beautiful to see.
Now, it is nice to see, you know, diversity, but is it really diversity if there's no Zionist representation at these encampments? You know?
Yeah, these people are basically ZERPs, you know, Zionist exclusionary radical Palestinians.
That's exactly right. That's 100% right. They are ZERPs. And
are you pushing for like a DNI campaign?
I absolutely am. I think that until we represent all sides of an issue, then everyone should be arrested. Everyone should go to jail. So Hadar, we met, I've known of you for a long time. And we've met once before we all did, Hanukkah together.
And actually, you know, before that, I knew you from the speech you gave at, the protest in Hollywood when you shut down Hollywood.
Yeah.
Classic.
And you gave such a beautiful speech, and it was super heartfelt and very funny. And I could only hear your voice. I didn't see you.
Cool.
But I was like, who's that comedian?
Yeah. And, you know, people have been asking the same question to this very day.
You must have been pretty far back in the crowd because this guy's tall.
I know. You would have figured.
Tallest Jew on the block.
Literally.
Well, we did shut down Hollywood Boulevard, which was really...
It was pretty sick.
Cool.
It was pretty great. That was a great protest because I came in there in the group that was like, we're going to get arrested. And we had meeting, you know, like a Zoom meeting with a lawyer. And we were like, oh, man, you know, we got to just be ready. Make sure you don't have all your stuff on you. You got to come in with just your ID, you know, not even your phone. And then it rained. And, and then about, I don't know.
Yeah, the rain was pretty bad.
I think maybe around 10. It was not even 10. It was a reasonable time. It was like 8.
You actually need to update the theme song. You know, precipitation, us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, allergic to wet clothes, us. After a while, the organizers said, well, you know, guys, we did great. We did so good. Palestine freedom, like, this close, but we gotta not all get sick, which I actually very much appreciated because self-care is important. But you know, recently, you know, if you've been watching the news, which I have, you've noticed some people who are not so lucky, specifically at college campuses all over this country, and
they're getting rained on with other substances and objects.
Yeah, like that skunk spray and rubber bullets.
Oh, and actual rodents.
Yeah, actual rodents. I mean, it seems like the people who are getting the brunt of, you know, the violence that's happening is literal children. And when I say children, I guess I mean college kids who, I don't know about you guys, but I consider college kids to be kids. And it has been an interesting, I would say, week and a half. And so we recorded this podcast. The last time we recorded together was with Bassem.
Yes.
We had a great Bassem episode. And I was like, oh, this is, you know, I think at the time, Colombia had just started to kind of come up in the news. There was a lot of news about Shai Davidai, who I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right.
Davidai, probably.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Shai, he's a bad guy.
Yeah. I've been trying to come up with like a Pointer Sisters parody.
Shy by.
Shut up, Shy. You know, he's so shy.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da. But I haven't quite nailed it yet.
Yeah, there's something there. But so, and I remember when this was happening, I was thinking, oh man, you know, more, you know, fodder this guy is hilarious.
This guy is just custom made to be in the Bad Hasbara,
in the Pantheon. Yes, yeah. He is.
Did you say Pantheon?
I said Pantheon in my head, but I said in my mouth Pantheon.
Yeah,
and I wondered if I said it in my mind Pantheon, but I definitely said it in my mouth.
In your Panthy mouth.
In my Panthy mouth, and am I embarrassed by it? Yeah. But we're going to move on amicably because sometimes I speak bad.
Am I being a shitty scene partner right now?
No, you're not. No, you're not.
Someone close to me complimented me for being such a good scene partner to you. And I really appreciate that.
That's a very specific thing, a scene partner.
It is, but I've always had interrupting cow syndrome and you started this. Why am I bigging myself up? Let's go on.
Yeah.
But it was just, it made me happy because I think, I just love our broship,
I love it too, and feel free to big up yourself anytime you want. Same with you, Hadar.
Well, thank you for inviting me into the broship.
Yeah. I like. Right now, the vibe is like you're right in between, and we're just like you're pushing us to try to get us not to kiss, but like emotionally. Then again. Who knows? But
I mean, listen, if you guys want to go for it, there's space.
I just realized I spelled your name wrong it says Daniel.
Daniel. Yeah.
Daniel. We'll keep it.
Daniel.
Do you know if you move the two of the vowels in my name, it spells denial?
Oh, shit. That's deep. You ever think about that? Well, I guess you're the one who told me.
I absolutely deny that I ever think about it.
All right. Fair enough. I think he does.
Where were we?
So where were we? We were talking about the last time we recorded it, and so we were. I was thinking, next week we'll have a couple things to talk about. I feel like since we last recorded, so much news has happened that I couldn't keep it straight. I mean, we've had. It's only been, I think, maybe less than 2 weeks of nonstop media coverage around these student protesters. And yet I feel like behind, and so I feel like for our audience at this point, people have been asking over and over again, like, when are you guys going to talk about this? And I was like, it's only been 3 days. So just keep waiting. And now at this point, I just have it's like I have too many things to talk about.
Yeah, it speaks to, I think, Hadar was just talking about the importance of these protests and how good it is to see the fact that the entire nation has been focused, if focused in distorted ways, depending on what outlets you're getting this from. But these kids are changing the conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm sure many of them would prefer that the focus be on Gaza where they're trying to get it. I've heard many of them say that, but still, there's something about, have you ever seen a student protest movement have this kind of impact?
Well, I think student activism definitely pushes American politics. I mean, and if nothing else, right, even just showing the people of Palestine, which it has, reached people in Gaza to see the encampments and to see wow, there's people out there who are still pushing for this. And, publicly and putting their bodies on the line. I think there's something really profound there. And yeah, I mean, I think I hear what you're saying, Matt, about the overload of information, but I see that as a good thing because that means that a lot is happening and a lot is shifting. And so many people are finding an outlet to express their rage and frustration and to take action. And may that just continue.
Yeah, I mean, I see it as a positive for sure, and I think here's the issue that I've been having recently, was so after about 6 months, I would say, it's been 6 months, longer than 6 months of this total atrocity happening before our very eyes. I feel like I started to see people finally get tired of the same old post 9/11 frenzy, Islamophobic, anti-Arab racist Hasbara. And we started to, I felt like there were, even in corporate media, there started to be some pushback. It was like we had reached some sort of critical mass where at some point people just said okay, well, maybe we can ask one question about whether or not Israel should always kill anyone they decide they want to kill. And we saw that, and I have an example of something that I saw in again, this is same random woman from Sky News who I don't know who she is, and everyone who's from England is like, she's bad except for this. I don't know why. But this is an example of
the interview with David Cameron.
No, this is an interview with I'm not even sure what it'll say in the thing, but just watch this pushback about the mass graves.
Who do you think those bodies are?
Probably terrorists.
How do you think these people died?
In gun battles with Israel.
Why do you think some of the bodies were found with ties around their hands?
Well, because we probably arrested the terrorists.
And then killed them?
Well, I don't know if the terrorists fought back. I wasn't there.
I just to clarify
with their foreheads?
Well, here's the thing. Terrorists have a lot of different ways of hurting you. Sometimes they do it with a gun or a bomb. Sometimes they do it with just a really deep stare.
Terrorists are like the bad guys in WWE wrestling. Mm-hmm. You're playing by the rules.
Yeah.
By your own military's ruling it. And then they'll just, you'll get their manager to distract the referee, and then they'll just break out a chair. And so, these guys are probably headbutting them with their hands tied behind. That's not fair.
Exactly.
If I'm going to tie your hands behind your back, sit still while I shoot you.
Exactly. You can't expect a terrorist not to figure out a way to do a suplex slam, even with their hands tied behind their back, because they are the heel.
They are absolutely the heel. That's right. And no one ever breaks kayfabe. This woman, I think, is the mayor of Jerusalem.
Yes, I believe it is the mayor of Jerusalem.
Do you recognize her? No.
Yeah, like from around. But to continue, this pushback is interesting because it is actually someone there. The anchor is not even debating whether it's right or wrong so much as the how does one die in a mass grave with their hands behind their back and it be a justified kill?
Yeah, and I think British media people have a certain kind of intellectual pride in a sense.
Yes.
They're often intellectually very dishonest, but there is a threshold of you're insulting my intelligence now.
Yes, 100%. I think that is completely right, where it's like, listen, you can do whatever crimes you want, but they have to abide by the laws of physics.
That's right.
You have to, if you fuck with Sir Isaac Newton, a man who has been knighted, then you fuck with our British pride,
Yeah. I mean, and also the added thing where it's like, if you're labeled a terrorist, then anything that happens to you is acceptable.
Right.
And the bar to being labeled a terrorist is actually quite low.
Yeah, it's almost non-existent. So they're like, we are allowing you to do this. Yeah. But you have to at least abide by the laws of physics here. And she goes on to push back further.
With their hands tied behind their backs.
Well, we don't know what they were doing before their hands were tied behind their backs, do we?
No, but if you've managed to cable tie them, they shouldn't subsequently find them dead, should we?
And maybe, again, we're just conjecturing. Maybe his friend threw a grenade, and then what happens? Maybe there was a missile. Maybe they threw a rock.
Sounds like a lot of fantasy world.
There's a lot of things that could have happened in her mind that make it make sense to have a bunch of people who have clearly been executed with their hands tied behind their back.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's just the thing that's so frustrating about this discourse is that it's so often rooted in fantasy and people's imagination of what might have happened as opposed to what actually is happening.
Yes.
And just the inability of the media to just reckon with what is actually happening.
Yes. And usually, I think we've seen multiple times these ridiculous claims that don't follow even the laws of time. Like in this case, the law of time would say like, well, so hands tied behind the back and then die, not die and then hands tied behind the back. Is that what you're saying? But usually you don't see pushback, even if it's among the more ridiculous accusations.
Well, look, it's the Israeli occupation. They can do what they want. They can reverse the law. It's like, memento time.
That's right.
On that side of the Green Line.
That's right.
Also, Israel's dropped enough chemical weapons on the Palestinians that it's plausible that a terrorist could grow a third arm to throw a rock spontaneously.
You don't know. They don't have potable drinking water. They could have been bitten by a radioactive Goro and grew 2 extra arms. And Mortal Kombat reference.
I thought Goro was a Zelda reference.
I was thinking, you remember the guy who had 4 arms?
I never played I never played the street fighting games. I only played like Bubble Bobble, Tetris, and the Mario games.
You come from a peacenik family.
Yeah, I'm a pixelated pussy.
Okay. But so we started to see this kind of, more and more, even like CNN, who is literally, there have been multiple news stories and leaks about how they were getting notes from the top about how they were to talk about Gaza in a way that was clearly favorable towards Israel. And it felt like things were, I don't know, maybe changing gears. Maybe I'm also naive, and I realize this. But then, something happened. And the thing that happened was college students started being like, this is bad. And once again, we're back to this narrative of anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
We're back to every bad faith argument that we've heard, not just for the last 6 months, but for years, if you've been in this fight for years.
They want to kill us for being Jewish.
Yes, they want to kill us for being Jewish. We are being targeted in our college campuses.
All these Jewish students coming in with their matzah and their seder and their haggadahs and their Shabbat candles as a weapon to kill
Jews.
To kill the Jews with tokenism.
Right. Yeah, exactly. They're trying to kill us with imposter syndrome. But yeah, I mean, you've been seeing this concerted effort, to now demonize these kids, and it's like caught on it's for not the first time, but I feel like it's the most powerful connection to a culture war thing that we've had in a while. The last 6 months, they tried the "we hate Arabs" culture war thing, and people were like, I felt like almost most people being like, if you weren't being paid to say it, or you weren't an ideological Zionist, you weren't really buying that. And now we are back to, college kids are complaining about shit. That's my favorite thing to complain about.
College kids be snowflaking.
Yeah, exactly.
Never mind the fact that the entire argument on the other side is a Jewish student went home and had a nightmare about being unsafe. Like Jewish students' subjective feelings. And I'm not saying that there haven't been moments where someone might have been right to, these are messy things, But in terms of the whole right wing, we've talked about this before, free speech industry for the past 10 years has been, college students and their feelings aren't facts. But when it comes to the feelings of Zionist Jewish students,
right,
those feelings are sacrosanct, and mandate massive crackdowns.
Yeah.
Well, what also just bothers me is that college places are spaces of education.
Yes.
And what's more educational than students literally showing up and taking action right now in countless ways, right? Obviously, the political education that it takes to, stand up, but then also the organizing education, like the way that they organize these encampments, like that is actual education. And, for me, I feel, it's inspiring because a lot of my activism was started when I was in college, and we did an occupation in our campus that was a place of education for us to learn about international political struggle.
Yeah.
And that is, to me, where, you can get awakened to justice issues. And that's what colleges can provide people.
So tell me about that. You as someone who was, radicalized on a college campus, someone who became Hamas on campus.
Not in Jerusalem, but in New York.
Yeah. Tell me. So first, I want to. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Jerusalem, and when I was 10, we moved to New Jersey.
Okay. So
Jerusalem, Jersey. It's
the
always
Jerusalem Jersey pipeline.
Yeah, exactly.
You know that in like the hip hop world, they call New Jersey, or maybe it's Newark, but they call it New Jerusalem.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the nickname for Jersey.
Well, there we go. I was just following the path.
Yeah. Is it because there's a lot of Jews?
No, it's more. It's actually the Black Muslims.
I thought you were going to ask if it was because of me. No.
Yeah, it
was named in honor of you. Yeah. You're on the flag.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, listen, I love stories of reverse Aliyah. That sounds great. So you moved from Jerusalem to New Jersey. You made, like a Sopranos version of Aliyah. And was it not until college that you started, what were you occupying for when you were in college?
What was I? Was it? Oh, okay. Well, so I went to Cooper Union, which is a small school in New York that has a very long history of student activism in so many ways. And, actually, I was so disinterested in American universities. I didn't apply to any universities except for Cooper because I just was so not into the American dream of higher education and the way that it's just so entrenched with capitalism and militarization and imperialism and just really manipulating students and their minds.
What do you think went wrong in your middle and high school education that you didn't
that I didn't have that
you didn't believe in the American dream and you hated freedom?
Yeah.
I mean, I will say, oh my God. I will say, I mean, definitely in the beginning, I had some I ended up in LA, so I clearly had some level of American dream and stuff in my psyche. But I mean, I think I was always really interested in intelligence, and I just never found Americans to be quite smart. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you were in New Jersey. Let's be fair.
Yeah, that's fair. But even, I mean, I think the intellectualism that was coming out of universities fall at such a low scale. And I think honestly part of that is coming from an Arab Jewish lineage where our bar for intellectualism is actually super high.
Yeah.
Even though we're constantly degraded and said we're barbaric and our traditions are shit and all of that, American education systems are actually they don't feel to be that rigorous to me.
I mean, listen, I learned lots of smart things in American education system. I learned do math.
How far of math did you get? Advanced algebra style or
12th grade math.
Okay.
That's what it's called. I can count to 12.
Do math until you don't absolutely have to anymore.
Do math.
Do math and know when to stop.
I had TI 83 plus.
Okay.
Nice. I learned read book.
I started a math business, when I was in high school.
A math business?
Yeah, that's how I...
Wait, what's a math business do?
Well, I would just tutor people and, support them in their learning of math skills.
I love that.
Especially other women, actually.
Oh, I'm not good at math.
Yeah. Well, it's the American education. You can blame it on.
Well, the Brits have an unfair advantage because for them it's maths.
Yeah. Exactly. They learn more than one.
They have more of the math.
Yes, they learn plural.
We just have one math.
We literally learn one math. That's all the math we know.
Anyways, for me, I think I was very, Cooper was very attractive to me because it was just very rigorous, but it also had a history of political education, which was always something that I was looking for. Mm-hmm. For me, the development of the mind is one of the most profound thing you can invest in as a human.
Sure.
And then I got into Cooper and it was the most amazing 4 years of my life in so many ways. It's a school that was free. So basically anyone who was accepted got free tuition. And, an American climate, that's pretty radical.
I mean, yeah, that's just not a thing.
Yeah. And it does create a certain quality of egalitarianism amongst the students, right? Because there's no these are the rich kids. We're all there on the same scholarship.
Yeah.
So anyways, in the second year, the administration announced that they're charging tuition or half tuition. And then the students rebelled and revolted and we just took the streets and we're like, hell fucking no.
Oh, I love that.
Peter Cooper, who founded the school, one of his lines was that education should be free as air and water.
I love that.
Yeah. So anyways, then we basically took over the president's office. We occupied it, I think, for 3 or 4 months.
Wow.
It was the longest occupation in student history.
Wow.
We just camped out there. We did so many protests. I mean, it was also post-Occupy Wall Street. So a lot of the Occupy energy kind of moved to Cooper as a focus. And we got just trained on so much. Occupy Wall Street people were supporting us. And we got the media there all the time. Wall Street Journal, New York Times were always on campus, interviewing students. We were just building all these connections with students all over. It was a really inspiring time. We would have governance meetings. I was one of the leaders. So I would run a lot of the meetings and it was just really fun. It was like at 10 p.m. to like, sometimes 2 a.m., 3 a.m. We would just like stay up, organize, read radical literature, inform ourselves, like learn about so many different struggles. Palestine came up. We did some workshops about Palestine too through that. So
when I hear this about like you guys kind of taking your education into your own hands and like, it sounds like what you were doing is, and I think anyone who's a student who's or who has ever been a student and has been involved in any kind of activism can relate to this. What you're doing is not just fucking around for funsies because you're mad at dad or because you're just mad at America or whatnot. It sounds like you are actually taking your education into your own hands.
And it's also not what a lot of students in elite schools are doing, which is going there consciously to set yourself up to be part of the power structure, to join the, you know what I'm saying?
No, I mean, it was so, and the faculty were also supporting us. We had amazing faculty who, and I remember one professor of mine said to me, you're getting a double education because not only are you getting your degree, but you're also getting this education around political activism and organizing, which feels so critical and so important. And, later on in my life, when I meet people who didn't have that experience in colleges of being politically activated, they are behind. I'm not going to lie, and then they need to catch up and they need to learn and they need to read books and they need to go to workshops, which are all great things to do. But, I think that part of what, and looking at the encampments today, like I think what's inspiring there is that, the American kind of college campus experience, like, of course, it can be fun, but also it can be very dry and very rigid. You just like wake up, you go to the class but when 100%. You create a village, when you create a community, when you create purpose where people are showing up for a particular thing, you're connected across, the US, maybe even across the globe, it gives you so much motivation. And, I barely slept during that time and I was happy about it. Yeah. It wasn't because I was so dedicated to the cause, and it's like there's something in that awakens. And I think that is really the model of education which is very community oriented,
100%. And, it's interesting, you bringing this up because it just flies in the face. And, you see this at these college campus protests. It flies completely in the face of the narrative of what's going on here, which is outside agitators. Mm-hmm. They talk about outside agitators are coming in here and they hate Jews and they've found a reason to, to publicly display their hatred of Jews behind the mask of anti-Zionism or whatnot, which they claim is anti-Semitism anyway, so I don't even know why they bring that up. But, and what I've been noticing, number one, I'm noticing what you're saying, which is that people who are there, and I tell this to people who are scared of, like, what are these kids doing? And I will say I've talked to a lot of older people who, when it comes to college campuses, they are immediately, whatever, progress we made about like, hey, no, the anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. We're actually, whatever progress we made, completely they've backslid. And they're just like, well, what are these kids talking about?
Are these boomers?
Boomers,
I'm
yes.
sure these are people who look back on the Columbia protests of 1968 against the Vietnam War with a certain degree of generational pride.
You'd think that would cross over, but that would take not watching 24-hour news networks for the rest of your days until you're dead and eating pudding.
Yeah. See also, I hope I die before I get old.
Yeah. See also, I hope exactly. But, I've been seeing, obviously, these, people talking about this as if like these kids are either not kids, they're outside agitators, or they're just like there for, shits and giggles because kids are stupid and they just want to like, shirk their education and they're just doing it to piss off their parents. So what was it about your parents that you hated so much when you were doing it?
Yeah, it really came from family trauma, Yeah. No, I mean, I just want to say that I think it's like the youth are have so much passion. And even for me, you know, like there's days where I'm just like, oh damn, I'm getting older. I don't have as much energy as I had in my younger 20s to like fuck shit up, you know? And like we did like some crazy ass things when we were, you know, had that energy. And I think that is amazing that college students have that, and they should follow that courage and change it. And I think that, you know, like something that's been really frustrating in a lot of justice spaces in the US for a long time is that it feels like there's been a huge shadow around challenging American imperialism.
Yes.
Right? There's all these conversations around racial justice, gender justice, economic justice, like even land back movement in, you know, the US where we're sitting. But sometimes I felt like there was this gap around understanding American imperialism.
Right.
And I think part of what the encampments are doing are bringing that as an issue. I mean, obviously centered around what's happening in Gaza and Palestine, but it's all connected.
Yeah,
you know?
That's the beauty of focusing on disclosure and divestment as the demand. I mean, and speaking of which, the fact that they have clear demands is something that contemporary justice movements have at times failed to do.
Yeah, right? Including Occupy Wall Street. You know, there were demands, but it was also like, you know, one of the biggest critiques of it, even from people within it, was that they weren't clear in their demands.
Yeah, like dismantle capitalism is not a demand.
It's not. It's a vision. It's a vision,
and you can make demands in service of it. But you know, and this is going to sound so Obama-ish, but
don't boo vote.
What's that?
Don't boo vote.
Don't boo vote.
Yeah.
Ladies, take a break.
Yeah. When they go low. You go low.
That's right. You go lower. Yeah. When they go low, you get
high.
You get sanctimonious.
Oh, yeah.
No, but, you know, politics being the art of the possible, not in the sense of how the sausage is made and all that Hamilton-esque bullshit. But I'm talking about the musical, which is, I got to admit, a very well-written musical.
It's well-written.
It's extremely well-written.
I'm not a lib, but you can't spell lib without lieb, or one of the other ways around.
Neoliberalism.
Yeah. That's good.
We already had Lebensraum.
Neoliberalism is my new favorite.
But I mean, I think it was Finkelstein who was channeling Gandhi here, that what you want to do in politics is to sort of set your sights on what's the farthest potential position you can take that can win a broad public.
Yes.
And then go for that.
Yeah.
You know, and
yeah, I mean, it's also, I think it is important to have people, you know, who you were talking about, like the people who get like so scared because they're like, oh God, chaos is going to ensue. And what are we going to do? Right. Like the level of fear response around things going out of order, as opposed to like seeing that as actually liberating, that the chaos can actually bring a different way of being. And sometimes chaos is actually quite necessary. And sometimes it's also necessary for people to be very, very radical, you know, even in a way that maybe I don't agree with them, but they're pushing something.
Yes.
And they have a role there, you know? So it's not just like, sometimes I feel like there's this sense of like, oh, let's get the broadest movement and let's say the things that will win the broadest people. And at the same time, it's like, yeah, let the people who want to go all the way.
Absolutely.
So then people are pushed, you know?
Absolutely. But the collective movement itself, these encampments, I just love that their demands are so specific, so attainable, so measurable, you know, and
so reasonable.
So reasonable. And as you said, they bring together all the important threads that can so easily get missed. The military industrial complex, the privatization of universities, and the complete ideological and infrastructural capture of American elites by Israel, and that whole, you know, the whole Israel industrial complex, basically.
Yeah, and I think it's also challenging a lot of kind of progressive leftist movement that's for a while been about like, well, let's just get the right identities in the room and then we'll be free.
Representation is all that matters.
Yeah, representation is freedom. Yeah,
representation is freedom, and you know, a very just like simplistic understanding of justice. And I do feel inspired by these college campuses and the activism there that's actually challenging like the belly of the beast, which we're sitting in, you know, the American empire.
And we're seeing, you know, we're seeing people who are critiquing this talking out of both sides of their mouth, because one of the things that, you know, they're talking about
both of their mouths.
Or both of their mouths. I mean, these are freaks. But, you're seeing them say, on the one hand, these are all outside agitators and or just like dumbasses in college who don't know what they're doing. But you're also seeing the great fear they have over how much actual reading these kids are doing. And, while we have a political system that seems to be gridlocked whenever it comes to anything that would, I don't know, increase and fortify the social safety net or help people live. The one thing that they can all agree on is that TikTok should be banned because there's too much pro-Palestine content on there. And that to me was, I think, what of all the things that have been happening, in the last, 2 weeks, that was the most bone chilling, I think, because that was the first. It's like I've seen, police brutality against protests before. I've been part of protests in which police decided to brutalize. I think most people, if you were marching in 2020 or you were marching anytime before that, at some point you have dealt with a line of fucking riot cops, and you've seen it before. What I couldn't believe was how easily Congress, the Senate, and the president were able to align on the issue of banning TikTok so that, so that China wouldn't corrupt our kids or some bullshit. But then you see clearly why they did it. And I have a video that I want to show you because it's just like, once you see it, you're just like, oh yeah, this is pretty authoritarian. So let's get to it.
Where young people are getting their news. Nearly a third of adults.
So this is Senator Pete Ricketts.
Ricketts?
Yeah, Pete Ricketts.
It sounds like some kind of like intestinal inflammation.
I got rickets.
He's at home with the rickets.
He got the rickets. He ain't coming out of his home for 3 months. He got a quarantine because the rickets got him bad this time. All right, tell me about your rickets.
29. These young people in the U.S. are regularly getting their news exclusively from TikTok. Pro-Palestinian and pro-Hamas hashtags are generating 50 times the views on TikTok right now, despite the fact that polling shows Americans overwhelmingly support Israel over Hamas. These videos have more reach than the top 10.
I'm sorry.
The majority of Americans favor a ceasefire and disapprove of Biden's policies with regards to Gaza.
It's also just like how easily pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine, Hamas.
Yeah. It's like, people, they are overwhelmingly pro-Israel versus this thing that we have decided to only call terrorists forever. It's like the war between Hamas and Israel is such an obvious cover. But,
The crazy thing is that then people will, in that same line, be like, but I do care about Palestinian rights. And you're like,
yeah.
After you just labeled them all terrorists, no possibility of freedom.
No, I care about Palestinian rights and I want freedom for them. Unfortunately, there's no such thing as a Palestinian, and the ones that do exist are Hamas, so we have to kill them all.
Also, as Glenn Greenwald pointed out, most Americans support Israel, and Jews are a beleaguered, persecuted minority, and the attacks on them come in the form of anti-Zionism, and we need to do everything we can to shut down any free speech that is upsetting them.
Yes. I mean, it's just like, for me, I look at that and I go like, what we're fighting here, what they are banning is education.
Absolutely.
What they are banning here is kids actually reading stuff for the first time. And I'm sorry, but to me, this is the same thing of them trying to ban library books because there's sexual content in it. Except for the Democrats complain when that happens. When that happens, you have, Dems going like, I can't believe this. This is, this is anti-LGBT. This is anti-gay. This is anti-trans.
I swear to God, I don't know where I would be intellectually, culturally. I mean, I'm kind of a troglodyte as it is.
Sure.
But if they had banned the the Shadows in the Attic or Flowers in the Attic novels. V.C. Andrews, those salacious incest books about those spooky siblings. And if I hadn't gotten to read those at age 12, borrowed from my girlfriends, not girlfriends, but girlfriends at Zionist summer camp, I don't know where I would be.
I learned to read from reading my dad's secret penthouse forums that he had under his bed,
That's literature.
I never thought it would happen to me. No, but, this idea of and also the cover story behind the trying to ban TikTok because you're like, well, it's China. And it's like, well, why is China bad? Well, China, their government is authoritarian and censors its people. And they only want things, put out. The only news they can have is, has to be along the government, the CCP line. So we have to
become them
to stop them from, it's just like complete nonsense.
China is bad because China is winning.
Right.
These fucking whiners. You believe in the free market?
There's winners and there's whiners in this world.
Exactly. So if you don't like TikTok because it's failing to indoctrinate people with Zionist propaganda, make an app that works better at having people believe lies.
Yes. I thought you guys love the invisible hand.
Yeah. Get Israel to invent something.
Yeah. Exactly.
It reminds me of, because so much of the banning is right around banning the narrative shift that's happening.
Yes.
And something that is sometimes frustrating, from within Jewish community, right, is so much of our tradition is about asking questions and being critical.
Yes.
And then when Jewish people ask questions, it's like, well, you're not allowed to ask questions about Palestine.
That's right.
And it's like, well, but didn't you just train us to ask questions?
Right. You've heard of the, Francis Fukuyama, the end of history. Israel is the end of Talmudic inquiry. It's the end of wrestling with God, which is literally where the name Israel comes
surrender.
from. Exactly. But I want to ask you a question because you just appealed to our tradition.
I know. I was surprised. I thought we were going to talk about Jewish shit.
Well, but this is the thing. You had to bring it up. And so here, you got a couple of Ashkenazi Jews sitting here, secular, heathen, assimilated American,
Canadian.
That's true, Canadian.
Yeah.
Your activism is not only rooted in your connection to that land and to all the peoples of that land. You've got strong connections across the Green Line and within Israeli activist society. But it turns out also that you find things to be connected to in the actual religion itself.
Right.
I thought you were going to go for God and religion too.
Yeah. And the God about, to which the religion is oriented and your devotion to that. We can say it,
Yeah.
So can you talk to us a little bit? Because this is an, ironic podcast, irreverent.
I can bring devotion to the bad husband.
We're dirtbags.
We can pray if you want.
We also,
but how about
do a prayer service.
But can we be devotional dirtbags?
We can be devotional. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Hadar Cohen, you have 3 minutes. Convert us.
No. Oh wow! Damn, on the clock. Okay.
I got a mikvah already drawn up.
I got a moil in the other room, ready to do a double dip.
Not again.
Never again. No.
Never again for anyone.
Yeah, never again
Not
for anyone.
Not just for Jews. No. What's the question? Like, why religion is important to me?
Yeah. Like, how do you source your anti-Zionist activism? And your political activism, and your work connects the spiritual and the political.
Well, I do feel like this is where there's a big Ashkie, Mizrahi. Ashkie is short for Ashkenazi. For the folks who don't know.
Yeah, we consider it a slur.
Nazi is also short for Ashkenazi.
Ashkenazi, have you heard that before?
Ashkenazi,
we've heard it.
Yeah.
No, but like Ashkenazi Jewish tradition largely evolved in the context of Christian empire. So the relationship to Judaism came also through a relationship to Christianity, right? Because you're influenced by your surroundings.
Right.
For Arab Jews, we were raised under, Muslim regimes, and the influences of Islam was very, very strong. And, for Ashkenazi Jews, they were very oppressed by Christians in Europe. So the experience of developing Judaism was very anti-Christian.
Right.
Our Judaism is anti-Christian.
And therefore anti the society that surrounds us.
Right. And anti the society. We need to live in the shtetls. We need to segregate. And we need to reject kind of the outside influence.
Yeah. And I mean, and also we were forced to, live in places that, No,
100%. It was like
right. But it was, the Judaism almost in a cocoon as a reaction to the fact that we,
And I mean, a lot of beautiful things came from that. It's not that, but that was just the context.
No, but that's a very interesting. Yeah, well, right. We're the most beautiful things. Yeah.
You're the beauty.
Ashkie beauty, us.
But, for Arab Jews, it's like we actually didn't have that same experience. Like for me, my relationship to Judaism is also connected to my relationship to Islam. Like I can't actually understand my Judaism without understanding Islam. And I think that the way that Islam influenced my Judaism is, very strong. And I think that's where you see that, Mizrahi Judaism tends to be more devotional, more sensual, more surrender to God oriented, because we had that Islamic influence that actually was very welcomed. A lot of Arab Jewish scholars were reading Quran. They were being in relationship with it. And
better rhythms and melodies too, I gotta say.
100%. We got the music.
And food.
We got better everything. I mean,
but speaking of food,
straight up.
There's just one dilemma though.
Do you know any Ashkie thing that's better? No.
There's literally nothing other than Mel Brooks movies that are better.
It's tough.
I mean, you do have sometimes like the humor, probably.
I mean, I think, but that's theater and the Yiddish theater tradition, which basically created vaudeville, which created American musical theater when combined with African American traditions, is a very strong thing.
You also have the German intellectuals, Arendt and William Benjamin. You got some good shit. We're not trying to diss you.
But what I need to know is, like, speaking of the food, like,
I know what he's going to say.
I want to know.
What do you drink if not Christian blood?
Oh.
Right, yeah. What kind of blood do Mizrahi Jews
Did you have
drink?
to drink animal blood? Like,
we're vegetarian.
Oh, jeez.
That's not true. You guys know what to do with lamb.
We drink pomegranate juice.
Oh, okay. It's a representation of the Christian blood.
Stolen from Muslims, right?
No, but you bring up
we're in friendship.
You bring up an interesting point, actually, both of you, in terms of like talking about kind of like, facetiously, of course, about, Mizrahi versus Ashkenazi in terms of like, Jewish culture at
now that's a Mortal Kombat level I want to see.
Yeah. Fight.
We'll make a TV show.
What's the Yiddish version of Ayukin?
Yeah, right, exactly. Fatality. Just both people who have IBS. Just both of them shitting their brains out. No, but it's almost like
neurosis.
We kind of I'm sorry. Instead of get over here, it's go over there.
No, don't worry. I'll go over there by myself.
I'll go over there. That's fine. You don't have to yell. No, but in terms of talking about like the kind of like Ashkenazi Jewish, the different cultural traditions, almost being like based on in this like the cauldron that was created in terms of like the Jews not having a great time in Europe, right? And because of that, when you're talking about music, you're talking about theater, you're talking about poetry, you're talking about philosophy and all that stuff. It's almost comes from this very particular Jewish experience of being constantly displaced and yada yada yada.
Alienated because alien.
Yeah, alienated because alien. Exactly.
And what like stand-up comedy is, if I'm not mistaken, alienation is at the very core of the stand-up posture.
Well, that's why we are alone
not part
up there.
of you guys.
But what I find interesting about the kind of erasure of
you find our erasure interesting?
I find it I find it funny. No, I'm kidding. No, what I find kind of like fascinating about it is because of the fact that it is the erasure doesn't just go beyond like this cultural erasure of like Mizrahi Jews being like, well, now we just call you all Israeli. Like, that's what we do. We go like, but it's the erasure of the history and the integration of Jewish communities within the Middle East in their respective like host countries or whatever you want to call them, in the countries they're from.
Avi Shlaim says that in his book in a really, really beautiful way, that the rupture wasn't just a physical rupture of like, separating Jewish communities from the Arab world, but it was also a historical rupture.
Yes.
In which our access to understanding history was, distorted.
And for a very specific ideological purpose.
Oh, yeah.
Because if it's true
for Ashkie dominance.
Well, but not just that, for Zionist hegemony. Because if and the two go hand in hand, Zionism in its core is let's get Jews from Europe here and dominate this land. Let's use Mizrahi Jews in whatever way we need to buttress that project. But if it's the case that for thousands of years, Islam and Judaism have been in some kind of harmonious relationship, even though, groups of people have always had issues in all over the world, then the entire narrative of the whole world is anti-Semitic and therefore Israel needs to exist falls apart. So it's like this necessary erasure.
Yeah, I mean, and there's so much to unpack here, but colonialism has a very strong interest in particularly separating Jews and Muslims.
Yes.
And wedging that relation and then using Jews, right? Colonialism and, the way that anti-Semitism works is actually using the Jewish community. And, we see that quite clearly. And I think...
Are you saying Zionism is anti-Semitic?
That is part of what I'm saying.
Holy shit. I didn't know I was on a Nazi podcast. Kidding.
Welcome.
Yes. But yeah, I'm sorry, go on, please.
No, but yeah, I think that's part of like the heartbreak of it. One thing that I think about often is that we historically are living in probably the first time in history where Jews are living this disconnected from Muslim society, that are not actually living from within Muslim society. Yeah. And that is a huge, huge tragedy and a huge loss to everyone.
Yeah. And
even the Ashkie Jews.
I mean, I agree. And it's like the erasure goes so deep because even down to the term Mizrahi Jew is an erasure of, it's an erasure of a separate nationalities based on the countries that you lived in. Iraqi Jews, Yemeni Jews, Jews from Syria. We're Jews all over the Middle East.
Who was it who said I'm an Arab first and a Jew second? Like many of these Jews.
Hadad.
Yeah, many of them really identified with the sense of place and neighborliness, and then Jewish was their religion.
And you see people pushing back on people for even using the term Arab Jew. And I want to
I get a lot of hate for that.
And I want to ask you about that.
How dare you?
And to me that's so fascinating because it's so, for anyone who's like, you don't even have to be that interested. You just have to look at that and go like, that seems weird that you would hate that. Seems kind of like you hate Arabs.
You know who
so masked off.
You know who thinks that's an oxymoron?
Who?
Ashkie morons.
Oh my God.
No, but you know what really frustrates me about that discourse? And I want to say this on the mic and have this permanently on the internet because it drives me insane. And I think it drives a lot of Arab Jews insane. Right?
Yes.
Which a lot of times the talking point is like, how dare you claim this phrase, this term, this identity, like Arabs didn't treat Jews well, we didn't belong, la la la, which of course you can question that history and that narrative, which a lot of us do.
Yes.
But if you were to let's take that into consideration, then why the hell is German Jew an acceptable identity?
Fuck yeah.
Exactly.
It's so frustrating.
Ukrainian Jew.
Jews return
Jewish American, Black Jews.
But Germany probably did the most vicious things to the Jews.
100%. 100%.
Jews returned to Germany pretty fast.
Yes.
But they're making up for it now. They're so nice.
Hold on, I'm angry. I want to finish my rant.
Yes, no, please. That's a great point.
No, it's just really frustrating because it's like no one bats an eye when you say German Jew. They're like, oh yeah, German Jew. But you say Arab Jew and you're like, oh, the Arabs didn't accept you. And you're just like, and the Germans did?
Yes.
Poles.
Like, what kind of like craziness is this?
It's a fantastic point, and one I've never even considered before. Because
that's why I wanted to put it on the,
It's so true, and you see it, and it's because, I mean, if I were to venture a guess as to why it is okay to put place of origin next to Jewish, it's because it's European.
Yeah.
Because it's European, it is okay. We like Europeans.
That's one reason. The second reason is that Germany is now part of the NATO world. It's part of the U.S. Imperium. And it reminds me of that. Forgive me for quoting an Ashkie Jewish giant here. But
I have to close my eyes now.
Robert Zimmerman, Bob Dylan, in the song "With God on Our Side" from 1964, I think. One of the verses is, the Second World War, boys, it came to an end. We forgave the Germans, and now we were friends. Though they murdered 6 million in the ovens they fried, the Germans now too have God on their side.
Wow.
And God in this case is, the godfather of world power.
Yeah.
But, but also at the same time, even, if we're talking about, we do also mention Russian Jews, and Russian is not necessarily a part of like the Western hegemony, right? Okay. I think it is, to simply like,
well, it's maybe Islamophobic and Orientalist.
It is completely Orientalist, and it's white supremacist,
100%.
in multiple different ways, and you see it, more and more obviously within Zionist communities. Like there's not a non-Zionist or just like some secular Jew in America who would yell at you
for your identity,
for the fact that you said Arab Jew. I never once even considered it being a bad thing at all. It was like
imagine yelling at someone for their identity.
Right, exactly. You're just like, Arab Jew. Like, the people who bring this up as like, you shouldn't say that, that's bad, or like, the kids out there who are telling their parents like, hey, we're Arab Jews, and they're like, how dare you, don't say that.
Which what is actually interesting about that?
Yeah.
Because even within Israel, this is what also drives me nuts sometimes, is because there's such a disconnect in American politics versus what's actually happening on the ground in the discourse, from within Israeli society. Because actually there has been a phenomenon from within Israeli society, as racist as it is, for many young Mizrahim to actually reclaim Arab Jews.
That's right.
Like, that is actually a pretty common thing these days. And there's TV shows that are made about it. There's scholarship. There's like, you go to a book, like, obviously there's many academics who've talked about Arab Jews as a identity. And to just be that disconnected from the conversation, and then somehow still feel like you are pro-Israel, it's like you're not even paying attention to the discourse in the land.
Can you talk at all about the narrative of this? There's a kind of, I guess you could call it a dog whistle when we talk about the rightward drift of Israeli society in the last, let's say, since the 70s, since Begin was elected or whatever.
Menachem, I just met him.
Exactly.
Sorry. Such an idiot.
I don't know where to begin.
Fuck. That was great.
Thank you. We really do need to title this episode Ashkie Morons. That's what's going on here.
We really have to.
Yeah.
Just about the conversation we were having before, one thing that's also really frustrating, just in the way that Arab Jew, German Jew, like that discrepancy, but also it just feels like for a lot of people, they think of Palestinians as Nazis. Like the whole kind of trauma and hatred and all that suffering, like Palestinians, to so many people have just, like, people see them as just Nazis, and just how ahistorical that is, to the point where, sometimes I teach all over the world, and sometimes I teach in Europe, and I talk about anti-Zionism. And then sometimes I have people from within the Jewish community. I remember I had this drove me nuts. There's one Jewish woman who literally was like, but why are you talking about Christian hegemony and, the harm of that did to Jewish community? Like, Christian community has been so nice to us of supporting like Zionism. And I'm like, just a level of twisted, deranged narrative that we're in which, like, we as a Jewish community let off the hook white Christian empire, even evangelical Christians.
Yes.
And then we just impose so much like harshness and
on all Arabs.
On all Arabs.
It's Stockholm, Berlin,
Arabic is a language.
Warsaw Syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. And
even Arabic as a language is like literally seen as a terrorist language.
Yeah, to the point
whereas many of the great Jewish scholars wrote in Arabic, yeah?
Arabic is also a Jewish language, you know?
It is a Semitic language. And it's funny because like when we talk about Semitism and whatnot, people obviously, it ended up being the term that race scientists made up to talk about Jews. They call them Semites, even though a Semitic is a language group. Mm-hmm. And like even down to the fact that is Arabic is also a Semitic language. It's like completely erased as like, no, this Nazi shit. I mean, you can't even say Intifada without people, You
can't even say Allah.
Yeah, you can't say Allah. Yeah, which is just God. It's just, and
I don't mind if you say
Allahu Akbar and people start like having a panic attack.
You can say Allah, but don't put a ya in front of it or put Akbar after it.
That's right. Just Allah
show
part.
some respect.
Yeah, exactly.
For my feelings.
To my feelings of
the feelings that come from my prejudices.
Yes, and my ignorance. And so it's interesting because we have seen, at least on this podcast, we did a whole episode about Hen Mazig.
Oh.
Who
did you see him and Brianna Joy Gray this week?
Oh no.
Yeah.
Was it good?
Well, I didn't actually watch it, but I saw his because I only saw it today. I didn't have a chance, but he was pushing back on her. He's basically like, look at this so-called journalist telling a Mizrahi Jew,
a gay Mizrahi Jew,
that things were great in Arabic. In Iraq.
Yes.
She was talking about, look, your beef with Iraq is your thing, but what does that have to do with the Palestinians?
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
And we talked about him in a previous episode.
Yeah. So I mean, I would say that in terms of the usefulness of Mizrahi Jews for the sake of the Zionist project.
Useful idiots.
Yeah.
But that doesn't work because they're not Yiddish.
I know, but
it
could have worked. But no, you see a lot of tokenism.
Yeah.
And I feel like I want to, ask you to speak on that because the one thing in talking to Mizrahi Jews in my own life, the one thing I'm trying not to do is to tokenize them. I'm trying not to put words in their mouth or like trying to tell them what kind of experience would be in these Arab states would be good for my narrative.
Yeah.
And so I've had the question for a while, and I've read a limited amount on the Arab experience, the Arab Jewish experience in the Middle East. What is the narrative that you grew up with versus what is the narrative that you've come to like question? Where are you now with it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so I grew up in a very Mizrahi home, which, within Israeli society, there's kind of two largely groups of Mizrahim. There's a Mizrahim who integrate and mix with Ashkenazim, and there's a Mizrahim who don't. And
is that based on where exactly from the Middle East they are, or just based on when they made Aliyah? Or?
Mostly, sometimes depending on economic conditions, like where they were placed.
Okay. Yes.
There's certain areas that are just so impoverished that it was just like that was the neighborhood.
Right. I heard you say I heard you say once that there's actually a word in modern Hebrew, a verb. That describes the process of becoming
lehishtaknez.
What is it?
Lehishtaknez.
Lehishtaknez?
Yeah, to become Ashkenazi.
Oh my God. Wow.
So there's a very strong, I mean, just like in the US, right? When so many communities move here, there's an Americanization process.
Absolutely.
Where you lose your language, you lose your culture, you stop wearing the dress clothes that you would normally wear. You start changing the way you speak a little bit. You start becoming a bit more polite, not pushing the edge too much. You don't walk on red on the side. You know what I mean? Like just things like that. Yes. You don't yell as much at all.
Yeah, right. You stop talking with your hands. Yeah.
You just become domesticated to like a very like weird culture that doesn't make sense. So, I mean, the Israelification process is very similar, I would say. But basically, the Mizrahim, sadly, the Mizrahim who did have interactions with Ashkenazim or intermarried or, kind of grew up with Ashkenazim, basically mostly lost their roots. Like when you ask them, what do you know about Mizrahi identity and culture? They won't know what to say. So But the Mizrahim who actually were in those families who are very like, we do not mix, actually kept a lot of the Arabic, kept a lot of the, you know. So that's like a pretty big divide that you still see in Mizrahi community, is that there's the Mizrahim who really come from the places of like, we're going to preserve our lineage. We're going to pass down. Like I grew up very strongly, like no one in my family married Ashkenazi. No one, you know, and I was very like, my grandma was like, we do not do that, you know, because it wasn't like we hate them. It was just like, we will lose our lineage if we do this.
Yeah. I love that because that's just like, it's you know, it's Jewish mother syndrome in microcosm, you know, it's like it's even more granular than like, make sure you marry a Jew. It's like, make sure you don't marry an Ashkenazi Jew. It's not the same thing.
Totally. Are there Mizrahim on JDate with like in their profile no Ashkies?
That'll probably be me.
No Trumpers, no
no MAGA, no picture of you at Machu Picchu, and no Ashkenazi.
No, but of course it's complex, right? Because again, kind of going back to those two categories, because obviously then there were people who did want to marry Ashkenazi because then it meant that they had more rights. They were able to advance more. They were able to go to universities. They were able to get jobs more. So, you know, you kind of have the both and. Anyways, like, yeah, I grew up in a very like, we are Mizrahi, and it was, you know, Jerusalem at that time, you know, maybe you know of the Black Panther movement that started in Jerusalem.
Yeah. My friend Rebecca Pierce, I think, made a documentary about that, and she's going to be on the show at some point.
Oh, nice.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, Asaf Eliashalev, who lives in LA, also just wrote a book about it. But, you know, my parents were in high school when that was happening, and my dad was a bit of a nerd, so he wasn't really like part of the protest activism, but like they always were supporting it, you know? So I grew up in a home that was very like...
lefty.
I mean, so here's the thing that's harsh about Mizrahi community, right? Because it's not exactly lefty, because a lot of Mizrahim in Israel actually are right-wing.
Right, no, I know that.
But like in terms of actually understanding Mizrahi racism, like, you know, but that's to say that also I grew up with a lot of shame around it.
Sure.
Like when I moved to the US, I would lie about being Mizrahi. I would pretend I was Ashkenazi, you know, that's like something that happens to a lot of Mizrahim, is like trying to, because you just get all these like racist comments and like you don't want that, you know. So and you want like you're also like, you grow up in a way that's like, oh, if you're Ashkenazi, then you're educated, you're part of the university, you're part of the you know, you are able to have a voice, you know. So anyways, I grew up with a lot of different complex things within my family. My mom was definitely way more pushing this like, you need to go to the university, get educated like an Ashkenazi, like, you know, and my dad was like, no, don't assimilate.
Well, so did the story, the origin story of your family and your ancestors, you know, Aliyah to, you know, Israel, you know, a lot of the times that story is kind of an important part of the, not just the individual narrative of the family, but the Zionist narrative in general. And some people adhere to it, and they grow up and they go like the one, you know, we don't talk about Iraq anymore. I mean, we're not Iraqi Jews because of what happened in 48 or 49 or 1950, you know, whenever they were expelled. And, you know, it becomes sort of like, I would say almost like a facsimile of the Ashkenazi, the European Jewish narrative, in which, like, you know, we don't, well, we're here because it's, you know, we have to be it because of what they did.
Right.
And we kind of also conflate what they did in Germany to what they did in Iraq, and we say it was the same thing.
Yeah, we kind of inherit the Ashkenazi Jewish trauma,
exactly,
and confuse ourselves. Like, we're very confused people, is the truth.
Holocaust trauma by proxy.
Exactly. And so, like, I you know, I want to ask you about that in terms of like, what is your experience with that in your own life, and what do you know about your own family's history?
So I mean, again, my dad's side and my mom's side are they're both Mizrahi, but they're very, very different Mizrahi in every way. So I think I also grew up with a lot of, like, Mizrahi wasn't like this one thing. It was like there were so many, and there's a lot of infighting from within Mizrahi communities as well. So you know, my dad's side, my grandma, who I was closest to in my family, she's been in Jerusalem for over 10 generations. I grew up in the old city of Jerusalem. You know, she had Palestinian friends till the day she died. She was always very connected to Palestinian society. She was always very in favor of giving Palestinians their land back. So, you know, I grew up with that narrative. My grandfather died when I was young, but he was from Aleppo, and, you know, we had like really beautiful, like a lot of actually lineage passed down around beautiful stories from Aleppo. And, you know, even with my dad, sometimes, you know, I asked him once if he would like ever want to go with me to Aleppo one day, if like that's something that he could imagine. And like he just started crying, you know, like, so like that, like it's not like, oh, we never look back. Like, I mean, especially Aleppo, you know, obviously I'm biased, but I think is one of the most beautiful Arab cities, even though I've never been there, but like in my heart, I feel that.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's definitely like, especially to Aleppo and Jerusalem, there's like a lot of like depth and richness that have been passed on, and a lot of pride also about being Jewish from these cities, you know? So yeah, I mean, from that side, it's not like we made Aliyah, we were just there, you know?
Yeah.
They were just like lived, I mean, and right, Syria, Palestine are kind of...
It's just right there.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a little bit of Syria inside of Israel right now.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, like Aleppo and Jerusalem were kind of more cities, intellectual cities, artistic cities. Right. So my grandparents from my dad's side really came from that. From my mom's side, they're Kurdish and from Saqqez, which is in northern Iran. And they came to... the state of Israel when they were in the 1950s. And, you know, this is where my grandpa and my grandma talk about this differently, because my grandma doesn't want to talk about it at all. Mostly because she experienced a lot of gender violence. So she has a lot of trauma about that. But my grandpa, he speaks very fondly actually about the Muslim community, and he tells us a lot of stories. And he tells us that when his mom died, they did a shiva. He did a shiva, which is like, you know, the 7 days of grief mourning after someone passed. And he was just like, the whole Muslim community organized it for us. They supported us. Like they were grieving. He's like, they were crying with us. And, you know, when all the kind of Zionist agents came to kind of convince the communities, my grandfather definitely was like, you know, they told us don't leave, like we don't want you to leave. They were like, he was like, they were begging us not to leave. And I think one thing that's sometimes missed in the story, right, because Zionism was started as a very secular political movement, and when it was very secular, it did not get Mizrahi support. You know what I mean? Like there was no Mizrahi support when it was a secular thing. The only way that it started getting the Mizrahi support is when it started becoming religious. And that's exactly what happened, because when these Zionist agents went and they were like, oh, here's like this political project we're doing, like no one was really interested. They're like, why should we do this political project? This makes no sense. But when they were like, wait, you wanted to make a joke? No, you were like, I just thought it was a joke.
You saw the movement. He was like, he's got a pun.
No, it wasn't so much a pun, but just, you know, like, why would we want to go make like forts and walls and towers with a bunch of Europeans who don't even speak the language of this region?
Totally.
Yeah.
You know, and for them, like Europeans dressed all weird. They were like, "What is that?"
Yeah. But then, when you say when they made it into, you know, this religious project.
Yeah, and specifically when they made it about Jerusalem, that's what kind of, and that's what got my grandparents, because that is a story where they were like, "Well, Jerusalem is in your prayers," because, you know, Mizrahi community is very devotional and very traditional, and you see that even in, you know, the more secular communities now, they still have a very strong love of God and love of tradition. And when there was kind of this, come to Jerusalem, this is, you know, the city you've been praying for, like there's a religious thing going on, that's kind of what got the buy-in from a lot of communities. And, you know, my grandparents, they say that, you know, part of the tragic story, right, is that they were like, okay, and then they came and they were placed in ma'abarot, which are, you know, these encampments and
shanties,
so-called development towns.
Development towns, yeah.
And, you know, my grandparents actually were the lucky ones because they ran away from the encampment. And they were like, because they were there for like 2 years, and then after they were like, fuck this, we didn't come all the way here to be here, like we came for Jerusalem. So then they just, you know, found their way to Jerusalem, and then from there. But, you know, I think that kind of common story, which is a big part of the trauma, right, is that the betrayal from other Jews, right? Like that's like you're sold this story, and then you come to this place and something else happens. And, you know, the thing that's so harsh with most Mizrahi communities is that the option to return isn't there. Like my grandparents couldn't go back to Kurdistan or to Syria or to wherever, you know, minus Morocco, that, you know, and some other, like the only option was either to stay or to go to Europe
right.
or the US to become more Westerner.
Right. Yeah. Go to Berlin. Yeah. It's like, great.
Go
now,
party.
Yeah. Now I'm in the city of your trauma.
Go do some drugs and get the...
If any of our listeners / viewers want to learn more about the history of Kurdish Jews and their, migration to Israel in the 50s, I'm reading an incredible book right now that you actually recommended called My Father's Paradise by Ariel Sabar, who I think is he lives here, yeah.
I don't know if he lives here anymore, but States, he's taught at UCLA.
It's the story of his father's family, and a good portion of it is spent in their mountain village in Kurdistan, just describing the life there, which is just completely unique. They spoke Aramaic.
Wow.
It was one of the places where that language was Jesus'
language. Yeah, my grandparents also speak
They
Aramaic.
still speak it, yeah.
Wow. For those of you who don't know, Aramaic is the language invented by Mel Gibson for the movie The Passion of the Christ.
That's right. It has an Australian accent.
Yeah.
It actually came from the West? No.
Yeah, sure. That's not Jesus. I don't know what I'm doing.
Do I like Jews? No.
No, I don't know them. Just
kind of close off on that is I think part of the harshness of Mizrahi experience that I certainly feel a lot is that, right, like not being able to actually be an Easterner in the way that we're labeled, right? We actually have to give up our Eastern roots, and like the two options seem like either become Israeli, the Israelification, which really means become Ashkenazi or European, Western, whatever, or go to the West,
right?
Europe, the US, like those are kind of our options. And again, minus, Morocco, and there's some, revival of Tunisian Jewish. There's Tunisian Jewish communities who stayed there forever, but some of that is being revived in Egypt. Now there's a bit more Jewish revival going on as well. But, overall, there's been just so much loss there.
So I want to, close this out with just kind of a fear that I have.
Okay.
In terms of...
You're scared of the
I have a fear, Matt, that we're never going to get to talk about Shai Davidai in detail on this podcast.
We are absolutely going to be able to do that. Okay. It's just probably not this episode.
Great.
But the thing is I knew we weren't going to do this. Yeah. As soon as I found out you guys were both here, I was like, fuck it. Let's talk, because I wanted to talk about...
This stuff is too interesting and too important and too overlooked.
Way too overlooked. And it ties into a neuroses that I have, a fear that I have about the way in which the Arab Jewish narrative has been, not just, erased, but like torn down and then recreated in the image of Zionism.
Totally.
Right? And the way in which that kind of almost works both ways in terms of you seeing in the Arab world because of the constant conflation of Jew and Zionist and Israeli and whatnot. And
especially in Cuba. When they were, because they, Jew are Zionists.
Jew are Zionists.
Jew really believe in the right of return for Jews.
I was like, will this be a pun or will this be a fact? I don't know, because I don't know a lot.
You never know.
But
oh God, someone put me out of my misery.
Yes, but because of the way in which, because of the way in which you see kind of there's the constant anti-Arab racism coming out of Israel. You see in the Arab world, you do see people who are just like fuck Jews, right? There is in general who's to say what's overblown and what isn't, but you see kind of the very successful way in which Zionism has been able to separate Jews from the Arab world in a way that's it's poisoned Arab Jews against the Arab world and Arabs against the Jewish world, so to speak.
It's succeeded in a conversion process of Muslims to anti-Semitism.
Yes. And
Certainly not all of them or most of them, but
of course,
but enough of them to form a real impediment.
Which was part of the final solution in a way, right? Like, we're not going to kill the Jews, but we're going to let the Muslims kill the Jews. You know,
that's right.
Yeah, and what I find kind of like interesting, or not interesting, what I find scary about it is I see the way in which that was, I think, successfully pulled off.
Yeah, very successful.
The way in which, I mean, honestly, if even amongst like Arab Americans, like if I were an Arab American, I would be like, I don't know how any Arab in the world can look at Israel and not be like mad. You know what I mean? Not be mad at all Jews, but like just being fucking like, they're doing apartheid to my fucking people.
Well, I don't know how you could be a Jew and look at Israel and not be mad.
You would think, but hey, it seems like it's for us, so it's okay. But what worries me about this is you see this model of a very successful kind of like reframing of a very successful poisoning of people against each other, Arabs and Arab Jews, Arab Muslims, Arab Jews, Arab Christians, Arab Jews, and I see that as something that is attempted to be repeated, but in the West, this poisoning of Jews in America and Jews in the West against college students, against anyone who goes against the Zionist narrative. And so my fear is I see it, the most successful iteration of that in the last 6 months. Is the first time in my life that when it comes to the issue of like Israel, amongst American Jews who are pretty insulated from what is going on there, they can have opinions about it, but we are all insulated. Now looking at their neighbors and looking at people who are not Jewish or who are Jewish but are anti-Zionist and going like, we got to get the fuck out of here. People actually like saying stuff like that. And I don't know how you guys feel about it, but it's like one of the things that I find to be the most disturbing kind of like anti-Semitic projects in modern times is, this kind of attempt to scare Jews out of the countries that they live in.
Yeah, it's almost like they're trying to provoke the kind of flight and re-identification and erasure.
That's what I'm saying.
And
we'll take our suitcase and go.
Yeah. And I remember this from Zionist summer camp when I was a kid. There was something I just chafed at when my madrichim, which means counselors, would do these activities with us where we're supposed to like think about our Jewish identity. And of course, we always knew that the punchline, we'd have discussions, you could say whatever you wanted, but we knew that what was being driven at was your true Jewish identity rests with the nation and the place where the nation has come to flourish, i.e. the state of Israel, which means you're not really at home here, kids.
Right.
And you better be preparing for the plan B. You better be, feeling less comfortable here than you have. Then you've earned the right, and then you've been given the right and the freedom to feel, which isn't to say that being a Jew is always hunky-dory in North America, but it's not pleasant necessarily to be a Chinese immigrant or to be the kid of anyone from any other part of the world.
Right.
In fact, you might say that compared to other minorities,
doing pretty good.
It's fucking Shangri-La here for Jews.
Yeah, comparatively.
Because we can pass as white.
Yes, and I think that is, so when I hear your story, I see it almost as it feels like a scary foreshadowing,
cautionary tale,
a cautionary, and I don't want to say what just your story, but when I hear the story of the Mizrahi Jews, it greatly concerns me as someone who has seen more and more people who are, starting to talk like Aliyah is something that is being forced upon them as opposed to something that is maybe they're being told is being forced upon them.
Well, I think one of the most successful things that Zionism did was the weaponization of religion and, turning something that was a colonial project into a religious struggle. And if you watch 75 years later, you watch most of the media, they're still talking about it as sort of like a religious conflict. What are the Jews and the Muslims and the Jews and the Muslims? And it's like, that's not really what's going on, and that's why you get
Christians under the rubble are being like, what about us?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But, and that's why you can kind of get into these really distorted conversations where you're like, well, what about 15,000 children being murdered in Gaza? And then the response is like, well, but the Bible says, Deuteronomy.
Or at best, religious extremism is bad. It's just a shame that people believe in God because this is what it leads to.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly, so the way that like the religious conversation kind of shapes, and manipulates actual reality and distracts people from, the ongoing violence that's been happening. And then obviously there's consequences to that, as you were saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I think we see that in the US for sure, is that like, targeted attacks towards Muslims and also to Jews has been increasing all over the world because there's such an enmeshment of religion in that. And I think that, for me, I'll just say that part of the activism of dismantling Zionism has to also be in dismantling that narrative of religious conflict and actually saying like, no, this is why so much of my work is around multi-religious spirituality. It's like, to me as a woman of faith, as someone who's devotional to God, God is one, but the path to God is multitude, and I think that it's so important that kind of religious solidarity feels critical.
Yeah. Well, I'm a huge fan of you and of everything you say. And I've been a huge fan when we did Hanukkah together. You did this exercise that you had everyone I don't know what you call it, an exercise?
Exercise.
In which people were connecting via asking questions and then really listening to the answer.
And then asking a deeper question underneath that question.
Right. Yeah. And it was, you and Daniel did it together. Like Daniel, volunteers like, sure, I'll try this. And you guys ended up having one of the most, it was a spiritual experience watching it because you guys are both very emotionally intelligent people. And you were... Can
I quote you on that?
Yes, you can. You can put that in the...
bio.
Yeah, exactly. Put that in your bio. He's very emotionally intelligent. Handsome as the devil. So I'm just a huge fan of that kind of work. And I want to, it's the end of the show and I want to plug what it is that you do, and I want you to tell people where they can find your work and the stuff that
and maybe I'll just quickly put a political plug first and then
please
no, but I think that part of my activism has led me to the place, right, of like, what will it take to dismantle apartheid? And sometimes it seems like, at least for me, it's like, okay, the system is so massive, like how do we come up against like such an entire militarized system? And I think that there's two things that I've come through is like, one is consciousness shifting, changing the narrative, education. Like I think political education is so important. And I think that's why, going back to the encampments, why there are such revolutionary spaces, because when you educate yourself and educate the community and the narrative shifts, that eventually leads to the reality shifting. But then the second thing is a relational apartheid, because part of dismantling the material apartheid is also dismantling the relational one that's been created, between Jews and Muslims, Jews, Palestinians. And, part of that event was like, how do we practice taking down these walls that have been artificially created to separate and segregate our communities? And
even between Ashkenazi and Mizrahi?
Even then?
Can we bring that one down?
We can bring that one down.
I know we're annoying, but...
You're a little bit annoying, I'm not gonna lie.
I know we like to pun, but we're also fun to hang out with.
No, you belong, don't worry. I know you have a lot of trauma about that.
Jew belong. Jew belong.
We accept Ashkenazi too. No. But just to plug in my work, I have a mystical school called Malchut, Malchut.1, and
Malchut.
Thank you. Yeah, people say Malchut. And, it's kind of a test to see who's Arab.
Right.
Who actually knows how to say the Ch sound. But yeah, I have a lot of both classes on Jewish mysticism and also a fellowship that's called God Fellowship, which is about direct experience of God, which I've done multiple fellowships on. And usually it's a combination of Jews and Palestinians and other identities. And yeah, just connecting spiritually feels quite healing. And yeah, my Substack, I think it's just hadarcohen.substack.com. Is that where I do a lot of different writings? That's where you can kind of find all the different things I do. I also have my own podcast called Hadar's Web, where I interview different people about spirituality and justice and healing and art. I also am doing various retreats coming up, which is really exciting. I have one with Avi Shleim coming up and right outside London for Arab Jewish scholars.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we're going to be producing some literature for you all.
I love literature.
I mean, I don't know if literature, maybe it'll be more media bits, but you know.
Media is even better. I was going to say, do you have the literature in audiobook?
Yeah, but just like, you know, working with organizing the Arab Jewish community and especially Arab Jews for Palestine and, you know, shifting the narrative around the weaponization of Mizrahi identity for Zionism. It's like, how do we break that and build solidarity with Palestinians and other Arabs? What else do I do?
I mean, those are all good. All of those will go in the show notes.
Consulting, community conversation.
Hell yeah.
Writings.
Well,
check out my new book.
I just want to say, like, you know, I think many people tune into this podcast from what I see in the comments and the feedback I get is because of the irreverent, not so serious way we can deal with.
Are you going to call me not irreverent?
No. But you managed to be irreverent and reverent at the same time.
That's right.
But what I'm saying is that in the
a devotional heretic.
Yeah. In the podcasting / comedy world, satirical world, sometimes sincerity and earnestness can seem like the enemy, you know, or like, you know, because really what that does is it lowers our defenses and humor is a really great kind of intellectual immune system, right? You keep out the bullshit.
That's right.
Right. You repel the hypocrisy, all of that.
It's all my antibodies. They're just me being sarcastic.
But ultimately, I think
doesn't that like create a lot of like
confusion on the internet? Yes.
Well, no, I was just going to make a joke about like Ashkie.
Autoimmune disorders.
I was like, is that too far?
We have
allergies, eczema.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no. Bullshit's happening. I'm getting a rash.
No, it's great. I loved it.
I never know, like when you make mean jokes.
No,
like
we're rubbing off on you.
Oh no, that's great.
But I guess what I wanted to say very sincerely, you know, in a more devotional way, is just that when it comes to making a difference and activist, it relies on giving a shit.
Yes,
and giving a shit has to be from the heart.
Yeah,
and so I just appreciate that component that you bring without sacrificing being, you know, cool as fuck and being able to joke
100%.
Thank you.
And you know, here's the thing: people who listen to this podcast, they listen for all sorts of reasons. Some really like the dumb jokes. Some people just want to make sure that they're not insane.
That's right.
And I feel like that is probably one of the biggest services we did. I did also get a comment that I really appreciated, and I think if I had heard it, you know, months ago, I'd have been like, all right, calm down. But given how things, someone wrote, you guys are doing more to fight anti-Semitism than the ADL.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's a very low bar when you think of the ADL at this point.
That should be part of the tagline.
I know.
Hasbara, like fighting anti-Semitism.
Well, the ADL is an anti-Semitism factory. They run on it. Why would they ever want to eradicate it? But that reminds me, I have to say this, and I'm sorry if there's any Slavoj Žižek fans out there, but I'm going to do a bad impression of him.
Oh yes, make sure it's really wet.
Him and Norman, get your splash guards up.
Oh yeah, this is like a Gallagher concert.
But him and Norman Finkelstein did an event along with a bunch of other panelists, Maureen Rabbani and some others at OR Books in the Lower East Side in Manhattan. And they each spoke for like 6 minutes or something. And Norm went, and then Slavoj speaks. And he started off with just an odd opening. He says, it might be, this might be in the final analysis. I'm doing James Adomian now. But
no, that's great.
This might be, what did he say? Silly. But I really want to say that Norman, people like you and Norman Finkelstein and others are the most elegant refutation of anti-Semitism. If
if anyone was ever convinced of anti-Semitism, you would be the counter-proof to it. And I was just like, dude, like, that's a weird thing to say to a Jew.
I mean, for sure.
But to a podcast?
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%. It was like, if I had literally any other time in my life and I had heard that, I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? But the way the ADL has really shown, like, they've really, again, mask off. I say it a lot, but let's be real. Mask off. At this point, they're calling students Hamas. Like, Jonathan Greenblatt is like, send in the National Guard to Columbia. It's like, yeah, pretty much the ADL is doing nothing but upholding the idea that all Jews are aligned with Israeli, political and military objectives, which is bad for the Jews.
And also ridiculous because every single encampment has had Jewish students be part of it.
Which leads me to our ending piece real quick. I got to end with a piece of media that at this point, this is old, but it was just my favorite thing. I think we're all going to enjoy it. It's The Bravest Wife of All Time.
Look at my face. I am not afraid. Put my face on camera.
Oh.
Show my face.
Did you guys not see this?
I did see it. Yeah. With the word Jew. When I said double, I thought you meant your wife.
No. My wife would never be as brave.
She's brave enough to go on Piers Morgan, but not to do that.
No, this was a man who posted his wife going to, that was in Yale, going to one of these encampments and wearing a shirt that said Jew in the front and Israel in the back, yelling at people, I am not afraid. Put my face on camera.
Stop ignoring me.
Yeah, stop ignoring me. Someone hit me for Hasbara.
Make me a meme.
Yeah, I need to be victimized in order to be on television.
Yeah, I mean, she's the one Annie Lennox sang about. Some of them want to be abused.
Yeah, I mean,
gosh, that makes me so sad.
Yeah, and it was like the greatest thing about it was right behind her as she's doing this brave act of being the only Jew. You see
being Jew.
You see a bunch of other Jews for Palestine.
Yeah, there's a big sign that says Jews for Palestine.
Yes. You see, Jewish Voice for Peace, Jews for Palestine. You see, video after video of people doing their Passover Seders at these encampments. And then you see one person wearing a shirt that says Jew and just saying, I'm not afraid. No one else is either, buddy.
Look, no matter what kind of Jew you are, you're a Jew for something. You can be a Jew for renewal. You can be a Jew for Jesus. You can be a Jew for Palestine. Or you can be a Jew for awkward self-absorption and propaganda.
And more people these days love that one. And but not us.
And most of them are Christians.
Yes.
But I also feel like Jews for Palestine, it's so frustrating sometimes reading these. I feel like people just like make up statistics or like, 99% of the Jewish community is Zionist.
They always say that. Yeah.
Where the hell are you? A few years ago, they did a study of the American Jewish public and 40% of them said that Israel's an apartheid state, which is actually pretty high.
That's really high. Yeah.
Especially, this was a couple years ago, and also relative to like the people who name it. There's probably a lot of people who think it and don't express it.
Exactly.
Besides, how are they sending out these polls? Email? That's not how you're going to reach the younger ones.
No way.
If you did it on TikTok, we'd find out how what the real numbers are.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like Jewish Voices for Palestine are just growing and growing and growing, and are going to continue to grow.
Yes,
inshallah.
And inshallah. Nothing makes me feel more excited nothing makes me feel more optimistic than seeing all these young kids out there in these encampments, all these young Jewish people who are saying out loud, not in my name. And that's just pretty tight.
And one of the most beautiful photos I saw, there was a Passover Seder they did in Berkeley, and there's this beautiful photo of the Seder, and then two college students, one with a full-on keffiyeh and one with a watermelon kippah, and they were like hugging each other
from above.
And it was so sweet.
So beautiful. And it is, you're seeing it more and more, especially amongst the youth, and the young people's ability to not buy into the Hasbara is I think our only hope here.
You know what I just realized, Matt?
What?
The last episode we put out, we recorded it the day before Passover started.
I know.
And this one we're recording the day after.
Maybe
which
you're more
means
Jewish
we're the
than you-
most Jewish podcast.
You're more Jewish than you think.
Yeah,
You were taking a Passover break.
That's,
Yeah, 'cause
You
that's
don't work on
why.
Passover.
Yeah. Because
So excited for you
sardonic
guys.
dirtbag satire is chametz.
Yeah, that's right. We didn't want to be treif.
Well, because we don't want to, because it's about no leavened bread, so we're not going to leaven any. We're not going to
add
no
any levity.
No levity.
No levity during Passover. That actually.
You're the real good Jews.
That's
you know?
right. Finally, I'm a good
Thank you.
Jew. Thank you.
I quote you on that.
And you out there listening to this, watching this, you're also good Jews.
Well, some of them are better than others. Gooder than others?
Some are more good, some are gooder. That's how it works.
You want to tell them how to get gooder?
You can get gooder by going to patreon.com/badhasbara and subscribing to that, because you know what? That helps us out. We get to, keep doing this podcast and not having to explain to our families, why we do podcasting.
Give us guilt or we give you guilt.
That's right. It's gelt or guilt out here, and we will guilt you.
It's a guilt.
Don't test us. Patreon.com/badhasbara one more time, letting you know. And also badhasbara@gmail.com for all of your questions, comments, concerns. Please send those voice memos in, because I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear some stories from people. And when we do get these voicemails, I fucking love them. And sometimes I'll play them on the show. And all right, everybody. Thanks again so much for listening. Thank you, Daniel, so much for being here. Thank you, Hadar, so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I was excited to be part of the world's most moral podcast.
Yes, you were the most moral guest on the world's most moral podcast.
I was waiting for you to say that. I thought you were saying that in the beginning.
I thought I did.
I
Did I forget to?
Wait a minute.
I was like, maybe I'm not most moral.
Sorry, this whole time I thought I was on the world's most oral podcast.
Oh, shit. No, that's down the hall. This is a joke about my wife. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, from the river to the sea.
Everyone go hug a Mizrahi.
Hey! Oh.
Jumping jacks was us. Push-ups was us. Krav Maga us. All karate us. Taking Molly us. Michael Jackson.